So I'm up here at the Woodfield Mall in Rosemont, and it's April, and April means Easter's coming. The big E, that means the Friday before Easter is Good Friday. You know, Jesus died, and then 3 days later, he rose again on Sunday. So we go to service recognizing his death, and then we celebrate again. Churches should have two services, Friday night or Friday, all day, meaning different service times during the day on Friday, and then again, service on Sunday. So they need to acknowledge the death and the resurrection. So you go to two services, Friday night, Sunday. That's what I did, anyways. But I used to spend it with Gene Cho, but I don't see Gene anymore. So, no girly in my life. No girl in my life. Here's Macy's, and we're here. This is the shopping mecca, and there's basically 79,000 people in Woodfield. So, population 79,000, and then they have other suburbs around it. Carroll Streams is one, and they have the largest Indian population from India in this area. I don't know in the United States, but in Illinois, the largest Indian population is here, the Schaumburg, Carroll Streams, and I used to be part of an all-Indian networking group. Yeah, an all-Indian networking group. My friend Dean, who's Indian, Dean Patel, took me to the group, and I was the only white guy. So, anyways, there's a lot of Indians here, and they tend to make very good income. And this is a beautiful building, how they did this building in blue with the skeletal exterior. The exterior skeletal is just cosmetic. I don't think it has any serious support for the building. It's more of an exoskeleton, which is more cosmetic. Right next to the Hooters we used to go to. And this Hooters actually used to have, this Schaumburg Hooters used to have the best looking girls. So we chose this Hooters to go to. Me, my friend John Kerry, and Adam, and so on. We used to hang out at this Hooters because they had some of the best female talent. It was beautiful girls. And here's Paylocity, which this is the payroll service. And you can't see it. But again, the unique thing about this payroll service that I was trying to get into, unlike ADP and Paychecks, they didn't do any 401k. They had no 401k offering. So they were strictly a payroll company. And so I was trying to get a deal with them to give revenue share, that I would bring in 401k clients to them, and they would do the payroll for them, like they do the payroll at Walsh Brothers, and Walsh Brothers has a Vanguard 401k platform, and they would do the payroll. Now, in Speron, who has the benefit plan now, still, it doesn't do payroll. So Paylocity still does the payroll, and Speron can get a deal with Paylocity, and Speron brings in all this employee leasing, and they offer a 401k and other benefits, and I wonder who does the payroll for them as they go into employers. They can be partners as Speron with Paylocity, and they can trade leads and help each other get into businesses in a strategic partnership between Paylocity and Speron. So that's just around here, and they have the streets of Woodfield too. And so there's 80,000 residents basically. And this is one of the largest economic pockets in the state of Illinois. But it's a small area. It's 80,000 residents, but it has a high GDP. Schaumburg has a very high GDP per capita. That means per head, per residence. So it has one of the higher GDPs. So going around here, I'm wondering what they're going to do for Easter. Like in the entrance of the mall, they could, do some Easter bunnies. And Easter bunnies makes it non-Christian to open up Easter as a more general celebration. We do the Easter bunny. And that allows other denominations to feel comfortable about Easter, meaning other religions. So you can have Easter with Jewish people and Easter with Hindus and so on, because we use the Easter bunny. And so that's the generic version of Easter. Then there's the true origins of Easter is Christ, his death and resurrection. But in general, it's a celebration of the ability to overcome evil, overcome death, overcome all obstacles. It's really a celebration about overcoming obstacles. His resurrection showed that no matter what was done to him, he could overcome any negativity. So that was the essence of his resurrection, showing that no matter what evil they brought, no matter Satan being in with him 40 days and 40 nights in the cave, no matter what evil they brought upon him, he was predestined to overcome all evil. And that is what I am predestined. I tell you, there's no winning with me. If you're against me, you will fail. It's just when, it's not if. So, but that's your choice. So you can be team opposition, and eventually I will win in life or death. But I will win. So anyways, I'm up here and entering Woodfield Mall again. And Sears used to have a big presence here. And this used to be, let's go over here and see if it's still here. This used to be their auto mechanic shop. So Sears was diversified. And are they showing here anymore? No, not their auto mechanic shop. But the Cheesecake Factory, Uncle Julio's, Shucka Shack, and many others. But this used to be Sears right here. And so I don't know, a tenant hasn't moved into the residence yet, but this used to be their auto mechanic. So Sears, like Costco, it does tires, and that's what it focuses on. But then you have Walmart, who does tires and oil changes and some more auto mechanics. I think they do brakes. And so they move up into a little bit more sophistication. Walmart. Sam's Club just does tires like Costco. Sam's Club does tires like Costco, but Walmart has a more sophisticated auto service. Sam's Club is like Costco. Their model is similar. And they both, Sam's Club offered gas, where Costco offered gas. So their models are similar. Sam's Club offers gas, Costco offers gas. Sam's Club offers tires and tire repair. Costco offers tire and tire repair. But Sears was a little bit different. This was their place here, And this was a full auto mechanic shop. Totally full service auto mechanic. And Sears was unique. They started State Farm. They started Allstate. They started Dean Winter. And they said that's where you get your stocks and socks. Sears sells socks, and you go to Sears to buy your socks. And in Sears, there was a Dean Winter office. Now, saying that, there can be a permanent financial office inside the Woodfield Mall, where you could open up an American Express office inside the mall, or a Merrill Lynch office inside the mall, like the Mall of Dubai, right? Inside the mall in Dubai, you could offer a Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, American Express office inside the mall, or the Mall America, but inside the mall. And it would be right inside the mall. And so you would get all that foot traffic from the mall, and now you can have an exterior entrance and an interior, but you would open it up in the mall. I've never run into a financial planning office in a mall. But I was going to open up a financial planning firm inside the Chinatown Mall, but there's a guy doing it upstairs, but I was going to still open up a John Hancock office inside the Chinatown Mall. So there is no financial planning office along Old Town, the strip Old Town in Chinatown, but I could have opened up there then. Not in the mall, he's there. I could go to the strip, the Old Town strip in Chinatown, and open up a financial planning office. But here you have a Bank of America, right? But you don't see anything about Merrill Lynch. They need to start co-branding. I know it's for recognition, but in the office, there should be a Merrill Lynch financial planner. So Merrill Lynch should be in the office of Bank of America. It just says Bank of America. Nothing about Merrill Lynch. And they need to open up a Merrill Lynch branch inside the Bank of America. And it would say Merrill Lynch. Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. Now, they own a bank. What does JP Morgan do? It's Chase JP Morgan. But how many offices do you go into? Do you see JP Morgan? None in Chase. But they could open up JP Morgan standalone financial planning offices instead of Chase Private Wealth Management. It would be Chase JP Morgan Private Wealth Management. And so it would be this separate entity within Chase. So it can distinguish itself. So it would have Chase clients and non-Chase clients. Whereas you have Chase private banking, people bank at Chase, but what if I don't bank at Chase? And that's why you want independent, JP Morgan, separate from Chase, like Merrill Lynch. It's in Bank of America, but it also has standalone offices, like they could open up one inside the Woodfield Mall. But the whole point is that in some places you're commingled, in other places you're a standalone entity. And that means I can bank at other entities and still gather services. And I can go to the standalone office where I wouldn't walk into a Bank of America as a client of Chase, say, and do business at the Merrill Lynch office. But if I was a Bank of America client and I had financial planning with them, then it would be convenient to walk into the Bank of America and walk into the Merrill Lynch office. So they can have their standalones where they get their clients and then where they're together. So it's interesting how they do these things, but you have Red Robin's over there, J.C. Penney, and J.C. Penney tends to be very focused on the senior market, but 10,000 people a day are turning 65. And J.C. Penney didn't understand that demographics. J.C. Penney should have been booming, but they brought in somebody from Apple and they made a big push to go downstream into younger youth. Why go into the youth market? You have 10,000 people turning 65 a day in America. You have China having similar things. You have Japan and so on. And you have markets where there's lots of seniors and the senior base is expanding. And so they should have just went down that direction. Now, they did bring back the old CEO, fired the new one, brought back the CEO before, and kind of went back a little bit. But they should have just focused heavily on the senior market and going deeper and deeper into the senior market and stayed where they were strong. So people would eventually move to J.C. Penney when they get older because they're the 10,000 pound gorilla in that market because they focus on the senior market. So again, I don't know what they're doing with J.C. Penney right now, what their focus is, but I did go into J.C. Penney for family photos. But how about the grandparents coming in? Surely, the grandparents. See, they think family photos are just, the mom and pop and the kids, but the grandparents can have the kids come in and they can take photos with their son-in-law and daughter-in-law, or me. It'd be like me bringing in Mr. and Mrs. Kim. And Mr. and Mrs. Kim I would be their son-in-law. And Jen would be my wife. And then we would have our kids and we would come in for family photo. And so the grandparents would be in the family photos. But not many people incorporate their grandparents into the family photos. And so it would be nice if and there's two sets of grandparents, but mine don't exist anymore. My mother and father are deceased, so it would be just her parents. And I was looking to have, a set of parents again. So, some older or been around and I could have good conversations with them. They raise kids and so on, which I indirectly have, but not directly. I haven't had my own to raise. And so, again, it would have been nice to have Jen's mom and dad as my mom and dad and call them actually mom and dad. Thinking about it makes me want to cry. But again, I don't know what they're technically doing. And I'm wondering, what they're doing here. And, with the YouTube post, I can't put below it. It limits the amount of information. Other people put links, but you'll have to look up the GDP per capita in Schaumburg. But it's a very high per capita. It's only 80,000 people. But it still has a very high per capita. I used to be part of the Schaumburg Business Association. So, again, lots of good things here in Schaumburg. And, the funny thing is, the city keeps on doing this affordable housing. Well, how about if Schaumburg wants to grow and needs those lower income people as well. There are areas in Schaumburg or just next to Schaumburg that have really good priced housing, and it's right here near a big economic space. But Chicago and New York does it too the same way, and they suck up all these people in this certain demographic because they give them all kinds of subsidies, and it really destroys. Here's Tricosi Hair Salon, Mario Tricosi, higher end hair salon, but it really destroys their ability to get a certain demographics of workers. And so it really affects their ability to grow. And so it also, the government is paying too much of the wage base by giving them housing vouchers. Truly. And then what do they do when they subsidize? Lower property taxes, right? Because the people living there would have paid more, but now they're paying less. The property's worth less, so the government's getting less property tax. So it's not only they're giving them a housing voucher. See, you got to understand, they're also subsidizing the property tax. How? Because the person who owns the structure is paying less in property tax because they have low-income housing in the structure, and that means the government is getting less in property tax. So the government is actually paying it twice. Twice. They're losing twice. They're subsidizing the housing. That's the direct money you see, but the money they're losing in property tax revenue because they're subsidizing the property, keeping it rent controlled. They're subsidizing the housing. They're losing twice. They're losing because money outflowing to subsidize that person to live in the property, but then they're losing the property tax revenue that goes into the local communities to build the infrastructure. Why is America infrastructure so horrible? And these communities suffer so much to build infrastructure because they don't generate enough property tax revenue. And so remember, property taxes are deducted on your Schedule A. They reduce your federal taxes. So what happens when you reduce the property taxes? They pay less in property taxes, which goes direct into the state, the county, and local government's budget. And more of it goes now into income tax. And so the federal government, you get a lower property tax deduction because you're paying less in property tax. And so that means you pay more in income tax. And that means the federal government gets more of the money. And that means the states have to bow down more to the federal government because the federal government gets more of that revenue in income tax. And so the states have less controlled because of the way they're doing the system. See, you don't understand. The state loses. So the state loses control, the county loses control, and the local government loses control. And they give more control of the purse strings to the federal government. And I want a balance of power. So states got to understand that. And that they're doing things all wrong and they're losing their ability to control their own destiny as much. And they're losing more control to the federal government. And I believe in the federal government. But I believe there's disharmony in what our politicians are doing, and they don't understand. And this undermines state Supreme Courts, truly, and pushes much more up to the federal Supreme Court, and it undermines the authority of the state Supreme Court. The federal government can more and more use the purse strings to put pressure. And so there needs to be a better balance between states and the federal government. And I think there's an imbalance. So I understand federal lands. The government owns tons of federal lands out west. Tons. And they do have big influence in that area. And yes, and most of here in the Midwest and East Coast is mostly state-controlled lands, state, county, and local controlled lands, and the federal government has more influence with federal lands out west. They own all kinds of property out west, the southwest, the west, and the northwest. The federal government owns huge segments of land. And that's fine. They can keep these forests, and they generate money from drilling in Colorado and many other places. And they have ability to get money from pipelines and all kinds of other resources. So that's great. But the whole point is that there's this imbalance. There's a nice Marriott right here. But there's an imbalance, and they don't see that. And they're really creating a serious situation of influencing and taking away predestination. And this is why God does things, and he has to change things, but there's free will and self-determination creating predestination. Marriott next to a Holiday Inn. And it's nice how the Holiday Inn accents accent this building with a little blue light. And so there's a big economic base here in Schaumburg. So our politicians really don't know how the system works. And I've been trying to educate them on how it truly works. They're in office and they truly don't know how it works. Does Trump truly know how the system works? I mean, the nuts and bolts of the system from the ground up? I mean, truly, as a president, and this is why we have problems, that they don't understand the true operations of the system and how the system works. And we have a lot of inefficiencies in this country, and this causes a lot of hardship, and this causes a lot of tension, and this causes a lot of violence, incredible amount of violence, and it destroys so many lives. And we have so many people locked up, and so many lives destroyed, and so many lives tarnished. It's incredible. And that's because they keep on making incredible mistakes. Village of Schaumburg, nice little sign. And the kinder care. And, you know, they should start teaching them laws from preschool on up. Truly. They should teach them that they need to cross at the crosswalk, that laws are mandatory. And they should explain it from preschool on up. That how to work best in our legal system. But they don't educate them. And these kids don't understand the rights and wrongs. And I want them to understand what is right and wrong. So when they get punished, it isn't they don't know. It's that they made a decision to do the wrong thing. And they need to start explaining this to the kids very young and letting them know how the system works. They need to be, I'm all for entrepreneurship. Even at that age, teaching them to be, independent and, industrialist and so on. But they have to teach them right and wrong, and they have to teach them how our system works. And that's what Bible study is supposed to do. It's supposed to bring in, starting at the beginning with, Genesis, and teaching them the laws in the Bible and that, and teaching them correctly so they can move forward in the right path. But you're teaching them to lose their soul before they even get a chance. And then you want all this grace and ability to repent, and God doesn't want it anymore. He wants that to go away. He wants them to damn well know what they're doing, and when they make a mistake, they suffer the consequences, and there's no pity. No pity. So I want to get the pity out of the system, where everybody uses it as an excuse. And we need to start educating them about consequences. And we need to enforce consequences. But everybody wants to soften, and I don't want to soften. I want them to know the consequences of their actions, and when they take those actions, they have to suffer the consequences. You keep on wanting them to get grace. No, I don't. I want them to do the right thing, and when they do the wrong thing, they need to understand there's going to be punishment. And that's why I do all this forensic stuff and everything, making sure they can't get away with crimes. But also, I don't want them committing crimes. I want them to damn well know that if you take this path, you're going to suffer. It's not if you're going to suffer, you're going to suffer. And you can't get around the suffering. So the suffering is your choice. So no getting around the suffering. So we need to educate our children correctly, so when they grow up, as they're growing up, they understand their responsibilities, and when they make choices, they understand the ramifications. See, with the Breakfast Club, they don't understand assault. They don't understand assault and battery. They don't understand the consequences of their actions. So they need to understand. He didn't understand. He got detention, not juvenile prison. He's lucky he was in detention and not in juvenile. So he did assault and battery when they did that. And he talks about pulling off the tape and ripping off the kid's skin. That is where you go to juvie. So he's realizing the ramifications of his choices. And then he says, well, the father's overbearing. Okay. Well, that's supposed to be dealt with at school as well. That the parents are being fair and balanced with the child. And expectations, I give you the scoring systems and everything else. See this restaurant right here? Maxfield's. When I worked for Domino's, my interview was here in Maxfield's. And when he said that I interviewed with him and he hired me, and then he took me to his house, and he's a big pinball guy. He has lots of pinball machines in the basement, and we played pinball and so on. I met his wife. But the thing is, he promised me that he was going to put in group health care because he knew I was in the benefit field, and I never got the group health care. But anyways, this is a nice little strip mall, and I used to know the guys here, that it has a Century 21 real estate. But you know, the Century 21 office can be the real estate agent for these stores. It can do commercial, and the person that owns the mall, this can be the real estate broker. So if any of these tenants need to relocate, Century 21 can help them relocate. Nice martial arts. And if you're doing martial arts, dance goes well with martial arts. And then a little cafe, the lounge and rest. And then sugaring, YMCA, organic wax, sugar waxes, and then luxury smoke products. But again, this can be managing the real estate for the mall. Truly. This can be a property management group. Century 21, real estate and property management. Property management. This Century 21 office could be managing this property for the owner. And any of these they're realtors. Any of these storefronts need to move, they can find a new tenant and also help these storefronts relocate. And any of these businesses are expanding, like, say, the martial arts studio's expanding. Century 21 can help them find another commercial property in another location to help them expand. So it can help all these businesses, even the Domino's owner. He might want to expand. He needs to find another property and location, and then he needs corporate to approve the location. But again, that Century 21 office can help them expand. Rocky used to work for Century 21, and her boss or owner was a black woman. So here you have Tasty Bites, the Indian Eat. I thought it was called the Indian House before, but now I think it's Tasty Bites. But I used to know the people owned this, and they were really nice to me. But I never ate there. I should have went in there and ate, but I never did eat there. And then here's a foot spa, which I've been to, and then a gym, Evolution Fitness, which makes sense next to the foot spa. People are wanting to take care of themselves. And here's the Domino's location. Now things changed up a little bit, and then a chiropractic service, so physical wellness, and then we have a math learning center, and so it's dealing with the general population that's around here. But people at work here have kids as well. Surely they have kids, and when they're going, their kids could go to after-school tutoring here. When they get out of school for the last few hours of work, they can go here. When they finish their shift, they can pick them up at the math tutoring place. Or when they come here in the morning, they can have a bus come here from the school. But Conan's right down the street, the high school, but they can pick them up here. They come into work, they open up in the morning, their kid goes to tutoring before school, and then they take an Uber or a Diddy bike and they bike to school. But it's another way to integrate this before or after work with the parents. So the parents come in early before school starts. Say they start at 7 or 6 in the morning. The kid comes here for an hour or two of tutoring and then goes on to school. So it's another way to integrate. So here's a nursing services, and they say Illinois is under. But I saw that Illinois had too many nurses. But again, okay, so maybe things have changed. But nurses can work anywhere. So if there's not opportunity here, as I told Desiree, why don't you be a flight nurse? So there's lots of ways to fulfill your jobs, but not necessarily in the market that you graduated in. So, but again, for medical equipment and so on. And then a beauty bar. There used to be a hair salon that was owned by a Asian female, and me and her used to be good friends, and she was really cute, and I would have dated her, but we never got that way, but we were good friends. And I worked at Domino's, and hair salon was next door, and she was the owner. And she was a good lady. And she said that the business after I left went to pieces. And then I used to come over here for Asian food. Now this is Pho Day. And I thought, anyways, it's a Vietnamese restaurant, but I used to come over here for Asian food. So when I worked at Domino's, every so often, I come over here and buy Asian food and eat it in the office when I worked at Domino's. So I ate Asian food when I was working at Domino's. Not every day, but every so often I would get some Asian food. So, and then other days I would eat. So I had to pay when I came over here, but I got a free meal at Domino's, and every so often I wanted something different. because I go through the pizzas and the pizza combination and the wings and so on, and I get, tired, and I wanted to take a break from our menu, and I come over and grab a little Asian food. But this is a nice little mall. It has a dentist, Thomas. The male dentist is here. So nail, farmer's insurance. I don't know if he has, the commercial insurance. The big thing farmers is they don't do commercial insurance, but they should do commercial. And Annabella was talking about working with me for farmers, and I could say I love that girl. And she's a Korean girl. Her mother was a banker, and I was trying to bring her into practice with me and David and me and Annabella, and then her mother was a banker, and bring her mother into the practice. And David's a banker. So David and her mother would have gotten along, and they know banking connections, and we could have, levered that up in the banking world. And she knew a lot of the same people I did, Annabella. But now she's in Texas. And another girl I don't talk to, but I cared for deeply. So, anyways, it's a beautiful community up here. And, and has a, diverse population. So, I'm going to drive back, and you'll see Conan. We used to sell a lot of Domino's pizza to the high school that's right down the block here. So it's Conan High School, and Conan High School was known for its wrestling. Yep, not football, not other sports. It was known for its wrestling. It was one of the best wrestling programs in the state. Conan High School. So I wrestled in high school, and so they were known as one of the great wrestling programs in the state. So anyways, there's a lot of townhouses here, and I was going to ride my bike every day from Buffalo Grove to Domino's and then ride my bike home, but I was paying money to my ex, which I actually didn't owe her anything, but I decided to go with the flow. She even said I don't owe her anything, and it was true, but I was still paying her money. So you think I went short? I went beyond and above with my ex. I paid her money that she didn't deserve. But I still went with the flow and gave her money. But I did so many other things that were non-cash transactions, all this goodwill stuff I did for her that amounted to tens of thousands, you would say hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't owe her any money, but I wanted to put the best foot forward, so I gave her a bunch of money. Every time I got paid at Domino's, she got a piece of the paycheck. And I was suffering, going through chronic illness and everything else. And I went beyond and above for her. So, you don't understand. On the back end, God saw this and told her to tell me. I told her she had to honor her promise. And that didn't come until later, after I was let go from Domino's and so on. But my gestures and everything, and either she honors her promise to me or she'll be condemned. So this is Conan High School. But you don't understand the whole, there's a lot of intricacies. To me, it makes perfect sense what the conclusion was and why it was that way. But you have to look at all the actions, and then the actions of what she did, and the actions that were done, and the obligations that were made, and the obligations that were broken. So this is Conan High School, and so this is a prominent high school. We used to sell a lot of pizzas here. So I'm going to turn around here. But it wasn't too far from that strip mall, and it's in Schaumburg. And here's, I never knew it was James B. Conant High School. I just called it Conant High School. This is the main entrance. And the buses should come here, and I'm talking PACE buses. And I said PACE and the CTA can get into school busing. Truly, Chicago Transit Authority and PACE can get into the school busing business. It's a way for them to grow. And David, when he went to Lane Tech, David Kudo, my former partner, he used to take numerous buses in Chicago to go to Lane Tech. See, they used to take public buses to go back and forth from school, public buses. And so the PACE buses can drop off and pick up students here. And a bus stop can be, actually a bus terminal can be right here at the high school, picking up and dropping off students. Truly. And they can ride, a public bus system. So they just have the buses and they run in different routes. Now, it's a little different. Maybe it has to be PACE and they're just running the busing company because it doesn't go directly to where the students are. So there might be, they can't ride the public buses or they can ride the public buses depending. But this is Conant High School, and here's its football field. And so, again, let me move over here. Oh, no, I'll let them go around me. But, again, it's a good high school. It was famous when I was a kid in high school for wrestling. I don't know about their other athletic programs. But this is a very prominent economic area. And I don't know if their youth are growing. The high schools at Deerfield High School, we went from 5A down to 4A, really, but they changed it to 8A, so we became 6A. We should have been 7A, we were, but because there wasn't enough kids coming in up through the system, we had to shrink the high school. And then they were also talking about closing Deerfield High School at one time because there wasn't enough kids. So think about it if you're an elementary school teacher. Think about it if you're a high school teacher. Think about if you run a college. You need a lot of youth for that educational infrastructure to make it happen. Here's Lifetime Fitness, and this is where Callie and Marla used to work out, and then an Indian girl who I was good friends with, who I thought about dating. She went to Lifetime Fitness here, and she lived up here, I think in Carroll Streams. She was really cute. I haven't talked to her in a long time. But she gave me a book on the Indian religion, and I think I still have it, but I haven't read it in a while. But anyways, this is, a big economic base with, great presence and, but again, like I said, they have to think about that. Like all those pediatricians and then, all those preschools and everything else, they got to think about what the market is doing. And if they support the LGBTQ, they support the death. Because, believe me, they will support the destruction of their own, and it will be their own demise. You know how many schools have closed down in areas and that and shrinking? So if teachers don't understand that at all levels, educator, and then think about all the companies that write books. Do you know the biggest buyer of books are educational institutions? From preschool to elementary school to high school to college to graduate school to postgraduate. They buy the most books. They drive the book industry. Oh yeah. educational institutions, and then the CFP, CFA, and so on, they drive the book industry. All the certifications and all that, they drive the book industry. So if they shrink, so does the book industry. And if they shrink a lot because they support the LGBTQ and they support abortion, the LGBTQ abortion, they will implode their own industry. They will end. Educational institutions will collapse. The book industry will collapse. The printing industry, the paper industry, you name it, will collapse. The diaper, the formula, all that goes around those kids buying clothes and growing up, the clothing industry, they need, all those kids are growing, and as they grow, they have to buy new clothes. Unlike me, when I stopped growing, I have clothes that are 30 years old. 30 years old. I don't have to buy because I'm not growing. So the clothing industry needs a baby boom. It needs families. It needs the traditional thing. And if it doesn't get the traditional thing and you support these pieces of trash males, you're going to destroy the whole economy. The baby formula, the baby food companies, you name it. You will support the collapse. Singleism. Holy cow. That is going to destroy everything. It destroyed the Japanese economy. Do you know that? Oh, yeah, the young people didn't want to get married. They're doing everything they can to try to convince them to get married. It's strong-arming them. The Japanese economy, the Japanese government is doing everything it can to get young people to get married and have kids. And they don't want to. Do you know China has had the same problem? That they don't want to get married and they don't want to have children. They don't want to get married and they don't want to have children. They have Singles Day is the biggest day. Singles Day. They don't want to get married. They don't want to have children. And the government is having a heart attack. The Japanese, the Chinese government is having a heart attack. The one-child policy made them incredibly selfish, and they don't want to get married. They don't want to have children, and it's going to be the collapse of governments all around the world. The family is vital. The strength of the traditional family is vital to the whole existence of the world, the whole economic existence of the world. And the destruction, doing Modern Family with the two gay guys, holy cow, you're talking the destruction of the world. So, again, that can't happen. And so we can't have abortion and we can't have the LGBTQ. So all that Fritos, you know who eats all that candy and all that ice cream and that? Young people. They're incredibly active. They're playing sports. They're doing all this. They're motoring around. They consume a ton of calories every day. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all of them make a fortune off of young people because of their activities. Because they're playing youth baseball, they're playing this, they're playing that, they're going here, they're doing this. And so you don't understand how much they drive the economy. And the economy is shrinking. And I did say JCPenney's has their niche, the 65 and above, but eventually that'll shrink as well. Because if the base shrinks, the top will shrink. So eventually that will implode as well. And it caused Japan to have 20, 30 years of economic incredible hardship because they couldn't convince their kids to get married and have children and at least have 2 children. They couldn't even convince them to get married. To have even one child was a big thing. And I've been around those, and one child was a big thing. Having two child was like, what? And having three child, well, no way. So you don't understand. We're in crisis mode when you're pushing this LGBTQ. Disney will implode. Universal will implode. Great America will implode. You don't get it. These things will disappear altogether. They will implode. So you don't understand. So if we don't start getting back to our roots and make America embrace the traditional family and get back to traditional behaviors, what is happening with me and my brother is an abomination. And it was never supposed to happen. And I was with Jen, and I was with Jen, and me and Jen were trying to figure out how to get him married, find him a wife, and get him married and get him to have kids. That was our goal, to get my brother to get the traditional life and get married and have kids. And I would have been married and had kids. And it was all destroyed. But you don't understand. What you've done to me is leading and is setting the precedents for the collapse of the world. So you've made very bad choices. And those hospital systems, they're going to be hurting unbelievably, because you'll only have so many, a big amount of seniors for a while, and then it will implode because there's not enough youth. And the youth is incredibly sick. And so you don't understand, it's going to destroy everything. Because healthy kids, healthy husbands and wives have more children. You have to be healthy. Lyra and Ellen, she had 8 kids, incredibly healthy. My friend Doug, him and his father, my friend Doug, they own the largest dairy farm in Kansas. His mother and father, incredibly healthy. They had 21 children, no twins, 21 children. But they also owned the largest dairy farm. When Doug was 18, his oldest brother was 50. His parents were incredibly healthy. No health issues. His parents were like 70, 80 years old in perfect health. They probably lived to 100 or so. They were incredibly healthy. 0 health issues. He was 18 and his oldest brother was 50. So, yeah, a lot of spread, but there was 21 children. But they owned the largest dairy farm. They all worked. All the kids worked on the dairy farm. 21 of them worked in the dairy farm business. But you have to understand, their parents were incredibly healthy. It takes a lot to have a baby. And you need to be healthy to produce healthy, strong children. And we're destroying the future of America because the millennials were sicker than Gen X, and then Gen Z is sicker than the millennials, and then the generation behind that is started off to be sicker than them. And so this is an impairment that is growing, and we can't produce enough, and we will implode. So we're going down the wrong path, and we need to wake up and have a come to Jesus moment for the nation and start getting on with the right path. You can go out and play for a little bit, but even my Korean moms that I used to talk to their kids. There's a time to be serious and a time to get married. And they used to tell their kids, and they were tiger parents. And my one friend, she moved back to Korea and got married. But her mom told her, either you're going to find a husband here or you're going to find a husband back in Korea, but you're going to get married. And she ended up getting married. She invited me she is in my small group, invited me to the wedding in Korea. I was flattered. I so wanted to go to the wedding. But I had no money. She had pictures and everything else. It looked like a great wedding. But their parents understand that, and they put the screws to their kids. Done playing, now time to be a family person. But Korea is still having problems because what's happening? The kids are still revolting. They're not having children. Jen didn't want to have children at all. I convinced her to have one child. She wanted no children. No children. See, the kids were still revolting. They got married, but they wouldn't raise children. So that's why the Koreans are shrinking. South Korea is in a death spiral. Koreans here are in a death spiral. So it's funny in these areas that America, it's all wrong what you're doing, and you need to start addressing things and getting people to smell the coffee and getting them to move through correctly. And we have the church that's everywhere, and pastors don't talk about getting married, talk about not being single, finding somebody. In the church, they should have dating services. Oh, yeah, the church should get into dating services, encouraging relationships, encouraging to go out on dates, encouraging to get married, encouraging to have children. So we have to have a come to Jesus moment. And I told you with the Jews, they're dying. And they're struggling because all of them don't want to get married, don't want to have children, and Judaism is dying. So the one religion, Muslim, they're very forceful. You can't have abortions, you can't be LGBTQ, you have to get married, and you have to have children. And they're growing. They're doing right things. Truly, in that aspect, and I showed you they were the fastest growing religion with the youngest population in the world, the youngest population, the Muslim religion, the youngest. Because they have to do it. They cannot be LGBTQ. They cannot have abortions. They got to get married, and they got to have multiple children. It's a requirement. So we got to think about that within the church and start having people doing the right thing.